Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbiville. When we first started Veterans of the Valley a few months back, it was my plan to introduce you to my friend Al Hanson early on. Well, different problems came up, but now finally you get to meet Uncle Al. It's on his and Ruby's back porch in Bryan that I first started my passion for telling the story of Brazos Valley veterans. It was on that back porch that I met Glenn Morgan, Dr. J.F. Cooper, W.S. Edmonds, Sonny Franzi. All have been guests here. And there I met many other proud members of the greatest generation. And it was there I first heard the story of Sergeant Al Tex Hanson, radio operator of the 55th Troop Carrier Squadron, U.S. Army Air Corps. Al Hanson has lost count of how many missions he flew in World War II, his craft delivering supplies to the troops on practically every island of the Pacific campaign. Al, what a pleasure it is to have you here. I've been wanting to have you here for a long time, and finally, by golly, we made it. We got to move along because there's so much to your story, but I want to go to radio operator school in South Dakota, and that's the first time that you experienced flying in an airplane, and that's the first time you really got scared. Talk about that.
Went to radio school in South Dakota, and school was 24 hours a day, three shifts, 8 hours a day. They wanted radio operators. Well, I finally graduated. I had to take about 16 words a minute. That's how you graduate. A lot of them flunked out. They didn't want to be radio operators. Well, I didn't want to at first. So, okay, before I could, also in mechanics, I got 2 degrees, one in mechanics and one in radio. Well, before you could get your degrees, well, you had to fly. Well, let's go for it. Went out to this little airport there, and there was this Piper Cub, and they were made out of cloth and shellacked. That's all it was. The wings, sides, everything. So, all right. So I got in there and I had my little table there about radio deal, so I had to call into the base, and they'd call me back to check me out and everything. So we got about 4,000 or 5,000 feet. Boy, the South Dakota is beautiful. All these red barns and cattle and stuff. And this pilot said, if they didn't know your name, they called you Soldier. Soldier, do you see any planes out there or anything? No, sir, I don't see any. Well, you know, I had my safety belt on. He took that plane and did a complete flip. And when we straightened out.
He didn't tell you he was going to do this.
No, no. Man, my hands were almost bleeding where I got my fingers like that. And I said, man, I wish I'd have stayed on the farm. You know, just scared me.
That was your first experience with flying, but you were going to have a whole lot more when World War II came along.
So the next day, we went to the building there, and they pinned my medals and my wings right there. They put the wings on me, and so you're in the Air Corps, you're flying. But in the Air Corps, like you get base pay is $80. Well, if you're flying, you get 50% more. So that's what, $40 more.
Right.
But okay, go ahead. What's the next question? I'm waiting.
You went ahead. You went on to Denver. You were in Ogden, Utah, and then you got the good news that you were going to go back to Texas.
Well, let me tell you about Ogden, Utah.
Okay.
Boy,
Ogden, Utah.
You know, they cold and ice. Yeah. And, the Mormon people there were nice. So every day I'd go look at that bulletin board. There it was, Alfred E. Hanson. Austin, Texas, Del Valley. Bergstrom Field.
You're going back home to Texas.
Boy, tears came in my eyes. I'd been gone for months. And they gave me a 14-day delay en route to get there. So went to Baytown, married my beautiful wife, Ruby Novosad, May Novosad. Mm-hmm. And so they took me back to the base, to Bergstrom, got me there at midnight. And I showed the guard my papers. He took me right in there and said, you want to go to the mess hall first, or you want to go to the barracks? I said, well, I'll go eat something. Walked in that mess hall, and there was a bunch of soldiers over, and officers, and everybody in the corner, about 25 or 30. So I got me a plate and went up there, and the guy said, the cook said, how do you want your eggs? Man, I said, over easy. And with the next guy, you want ham or bacon?
You hadn't been treated this nice before.
Oh, my God, no. And, man, I was going to sign up for 20 more years. And coffee and jelly and everything. So I sat there by these guys, just listened. And this MP that brought me up there, he stayed with me. And they started talking about, they just got back from flying. Hell, it was at midnight. I said, all right. So he took me to the base. The next day, said, okay, you checked your record. Hanson, you're going to start flying. Oh, boy. What did I do? They put in those gliders. Well, I know radio communications. We pull those gliders. You got pictures over here to show in a minute. And, boy, that was scary. You get that glider off, the rope would stretch about 10 foot. Here we go, and boy, when it tightened up, that plane would slow down at C-47. It'd slow down, and boy, he'd rev those engines, and we'd finally get it off. We'd circle, LaGrange, Bastrop, circle, right. And they had a big circle out there where these planes land. And over the side was just bunches of them had been crashed. But every one we pulled, every glider we pulled, landed right in that circle.
But you preferred the motorized aircraft, right?
Oh yeah, you're gonna see some. We got some pictures to show later.
You went on to Pathfinder School, I know, in Indianapolis.
That's right.
Let's fast forward to when you went over to the Pacific.
Yeah.
You went to Hawaii first, right?
Yeah. Let me tell you about California.
Oh yeah.
I got in line there, was going to the mess hall, and this guy was right behind me. And I looked at him, and man, he looked bad. And he said, "You're probably going to Pacific." I said, "I sure am." He said, "Well, I just got back. Look at here." His fingernails were solid black, and his face was yellow from taking Adderall. Then he said, "You ought to see my feet." I said, "No, I've seen enough." Boy, that's when I said, I wish I'd have never signed up.
Right.
It scared me. So we got on the C-54 and went to Hawaii. From Hawaii, Johnson Island, Tarawa. Tarawa was bad, and it was all shot up. And just before we landed in Tarawa, the pilot told us it was on the C-54. He said, "We're coming in Tarawa. Just before you get to all these islands are just beautiful palm trees, just beautiful." But boy, we landed in Tarawa. It was shot up. Everything. We lost a lot of troops there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And then
Guadalcanal.
Go ahead.
Let's see, Guadalcanal, then New Guinea.
I think there we go. We got a map right now. This is your map, actually, and it's a little bit hard to see right here on television. But this is a map of the islands, the Philippines, and the red arrow that you see is pretty much your route where you went. And you just flew and flew and flew and flew as a radio operator. You spent more time in the air than on the ground, right?
That is right.
Talk about, Al, exactly what your job was as a radio operator in World War II. What was involved in that?
All right, sir. On the bulletin board, they'd have the names there, where you're going and what plane you're going on. And I always did this. I carried my .45, I carried a compass, I carried a knife and a cigarette lighter. I carried that religiously when I get on that plane. And the pilot never did have to say, "Buckle up." I knew better than that. Mm-hmm. I'd always buckle up. And as soon as I'd get airborne, when we leave the ground, all it was voice modulation, the pilot talking to the tower. But once we got airborne and settled out, well, that's when I got on the radio. I called the base, tell them where we're going, and then so they gave me paper to look at. It's all by key now, just by the key. Did-it-da-da-did-it.
We'll tell that story in a minute. Okay, go ahead.
All right, did-it. And had your earphones on, and nobody bothered you. You had your own little table, your desk, your radio up here. The tubes were that big around. That's what they had back then. Mm-hmm. And I'd call into the base. Then I'd call where we were going, our destination, and I'd always get the latitude and longitude from the navigator. There's 5 in the crew, and he'd give me that information. Then I'd call in, number of the plane, our longitude, latitude, and ETA, estimated time of arrival. I was through then.
And that was your job.
Yes, sir.
I want to take a look at a young Al Hanson and describe this picture that we're showing right here. This is your crew in front of your aircraft. You're the one, I believe, kneeling down on the left as we're looking at that, right? Talk about that picture. When was it taken? Do you recall?
Probably in 43, I guess.
When you were in flight training school, or was this already over in the Pacific?
No, that's in flight training.
In flight training school.
Yes.
And that's young Sergeant Al Hanson on the bottom on the left side as we're looking. Do you remember who any of those other folks were?
Yes, sir. The guy behind me is Captain Al Kemp. He was from Austin, Texas, and he always favored me because we were both Texans.
Right.
And the other one was a co-pilot, one on the right outside. He was our navigator. He was a Jewish fella, and we liked it. He was really smart. Man, he was intelligent. The other one on the bottom was named Frank Dirk. He lived in New York City. He was the mechanic, the mechanic on the plane.
Right. Want to give people an idea, a little bit of a better look at the kind of plane that you were a radio operator on. I think we've got a photograph here. There we go. I'm holding it. That was the planes that you flew on mostly, is that right?
Yes, sir. I love that plane. That's a 47. The other was a 46.
And this hauled everything. I mean, you all took supplies to our troops, just about everything except bombs. You took.
No, 50 caliber. We hauled cases and cases of 50 caliber. We hauled Japanese prisoners, and when they'd get on that plane, they'd be shackled at the feet, the hands behind them, and would they bow? Man, they never had any back trouble. The boy, they could just bow and bow before we'd put them on the plane. Then we hauled nurses, ammunition. We liked that, hauling nurses. Really, yeah.
You like that part of it. What else did you take? You took a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, I'm going to say some numbers here.
Jeeps, ammunition, just you name it. Baggages. Oh man, whatever there was.
Want to give people an idea. I'm looking at a commendation that's dated May the 30th, 1945. And it was for your squadron. And listen to these numbers. This is what said during the month of March 1945, in 1 month's time, during that month, operating out of San Marcelino.
Yep.
The airplanes of the 55th Troop Carrier, that was your troop, your squadron, lifted a total of 10,319,000 pounds of cargo in 1 month, including 368,000 passenger pounds, 9,951 freight pounds on a total of 1,280 individual flights involving a daily average of 15 different available types of airplanes. So when I say that you were in the air more than you were in the ground, I'm not really exaggerating.
And the only time I'd get scared is at taking off and landing. Mm-hmm. You're loaded, the freight Jeeps or something might shift. Sometimes they did. But I was always buckled on. Every time I take off, I do the sign of the cross. And when I landed, I did the sign of the cross. Scared. Really?
Talk about how you knew you were going to fly. They put towels on the tents.
Oh, wait a
right?
minute. Yeah, well, in the squadron, if you're going to fly, you look at the bulletin board and you put a towel on your tent, then you put a towel on your bed. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning. Here comes this guy with a flashlight, wake you up, and you go over and eat dehydrated potatoes. Dehydrated milk, everything was dehydrated. And sometimes you had that stuff on the shingle. These guys know what I'm talking about, stuff on the shingle.
Right.
With gravy.
Yeah, everything wasn't great to eat, I know that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the supplies that you dropped were dropped by parachute, different colored parachutes for different items that you
came
dropped,
out
right?
One morning, I came out there and there's nothing in the plane, there's nobody there. And I said, we're going to fly. And the crew chief, we always check the plane out. And here came this truck, and these guys started throwing off these parachutes. They're different colors. Mm-hmm. I think white was water and red was ammunition and whatever else. And so they loaded it up. And I said, well, it's going to be interesting. And we're going to drop these. The hills were full of Japanese. What got me when MacArthur say, so-and-so is secured. Mm-hmm. Boy, that was for the people in America. Those hills were just full of Japanese.
Right.
Yeah, but it was secure. The airstrip, I never was bombed. They'd always bomb the Navy over there. The bombs would come over, but they'd go to the Navy. They didn't care about the airstrip.
Right.
But they had a big foxhole back there, but we'd jump in there, and sometimes be a foot of water in there. We didn't care.
I know one idea of what they call secure. I believe you were telling me a story about when you went into New Guinea, and a fellow that was there, and New Guinea was really messed up.
Bad,
you met a fellow that talked to you.
Oh, well, let me get back to with the parachutes.
Yeah,
I said, man, I thought this was going to be fun. We went up in those mountains and had that door open, see, so that unbalances the plane too. And these guys got up and they had a runner run to tell the pilots, come on, you're about 500 feet to the west. He'd run back. And here we circling. And all this time, we're right over these hills, and that heat waves coming up and down, and that plane be bouncing up and down. I mean, it was scary.
Right.
And you're 300 foot to the south. Just kept circling, finally located. You couldn't see them, solid trees. And they just start throwing out those parachutes.
And one time your plane was coming in, and there were some problems, I believe, with the right side, with the right wing.
No, it's a right engine.
Right engine,
It was
yeah.
always going out.
Sure.
We were coming there with some troops to Manila. Manila was still on fire. Not Manila, the bay. Manila Bay was on fire. And Manila was burning too. So here we come in there with these troops, and well, that's what you love a pilot. That right engine started coughing and spitting. Well, we came in there late. It was either Nichols Field or Clark Field. And there was planes there in a pattern. You have to get the pattern. There was B-25, B-51s, and C-47s. Voice modulation, he called the tower. Well, all these pilots are on that same frequency. They could hear what he was saying. Look, I got an engine going out. I got some troops. I'm coming in. No, you get in the pattern. He said, y'all better look out. Boy, he set that plane right in there. Come right in and landed that damn thing.
I know one of the groups that you really respect because of what they did at World War II, and we've had guests here that were members of the Navy Seabees.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about the Seabees and the work they did. You couldn't have done your job without the work that they did.
Oh, man, they worked on those airstrips at night with bulldozers and stuff. Some planes come over, they just crawl under to get beside it, and we'd head for the foxhole.
Right.
Oh, man, and they'd put that metal lattice like he talked about, the metal. What I can't understand, of all these landings we made, on core rock, sand, dirt, and this metal lattice, never had a blowout. I can't figure that out. We never had a tire blowout.
Well, that says something for the Seabees and the airstrips that they built.
The
It says
airstrip-
something for the tires also,
Yes,
I guess.
yes.
The fellow in New Guinea, it was a funny thing that you went to New Guinea and you said, boy, this is really bad around here. And what did he say to you? He talked about
Oh, yeah. When they landed, we got off this big old C-54. Well, we were nice, the uniforms on, and we got off the C-54, just top stuff. We'd been to Pathfinder school. We were number one. Got off and got down there, and boy, and we went over and talked to the tug driver. I said, there's a lot of crashed planes over it. I said, man, y'all really had it tough. Tough? Yeah, you should have been here before we had the Coke machine. Man, that was crazy. So another time here, we went to Mindoro and Mindanao. There's two. I get them mixed up. I get confused on those two. But we had either one and picked up these paratroopers and 101s or something like that. I can't remember the name. We picked those paratroopers up. We're going to take them to Manila. See, Manila had already been slowed down a lot.
Right.
So just before we got to Manila, coming up there was kind of the side of it, and I was up there where my radio is, and the plane was going like this, and the pilot said, Tex, what's going on back there? I went back there, and these guys said, we dropped on Corregidor. They talked, oh, he got killed there, he got shot there. And I went up and told the pilot, I said, those guys dropped on Corregidor, 101st Airborne. He said, we're going to show them a show. Well, he dropped that plane right down, went around this way with it, where they could see out of the windows, circled that thing, went the other way, come back here, and they really enjoyed it. 101st Airborne. Oh, man.
It was towards the end of the war, I know, Al, that you were at Okinawa getting ready for a potential ground war with Japan. But it was about that time the war ended. After the war ended, talk about your unit, what it became, and what its job was. To me, this is very interesting, and a lot of people don't know this part of the history of World War II.
Okay, here we are. The planes are loaded with troops. We're ready to go. They gave us a little book, how to speak Japanese. And I've got some of it written down in that little book. And 45s, knife, compass, and had all that. And they spoke to us, don't cause any trouble. And here we go. We landed Tachikawa airstrip. I got a gal in Tachikawa. That was the word going around there. We landed there, and it was shot up. Sides of the building with 50 caliber holes in them. And we landed there and got settled down. And boy, all of a sudden about 6 or 8 little Japanese kids running around the plane. Sato, Sato, Sato. Well, I didn't know what that was. So one of the guys said, that means sugar. So we went in the plane, busted up 2 cases, which is illegal. See, I'm still on duty, so I don't want to get court-martialed. But we opened that up, gave those kids some sugar, and they just take those cubes of sugar and just throw them in the mouth like that.
And so go ahead. So your job there was as a part of the Imperial Couriers.
Oh,
right?
that came later, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want you to talk about.
All right, so we made several flights around the island. Then one day we had a big meeting, said, men, you are now with the Imperial Courier. You're with Japanese Airlines. All right. So we went out there, and they'd painted Imperial Courier on all our airplanes. And all we carried was Japanese officials to different islands, Korea. I had a chance to go to Hong Kong and Singapore, but they had my name on the wall, discharge. I said, no way.
We're looking at a photograph right now. Talk about what we're talking about. Because
yeah, that's a Okinawa.
This is similar to what you're talking about. This is a plane similar to yours, and it looks like a group of Japanese businessmen that this plane is about to transport
they're going to
after
Manila.
the war's over.
The war's over. They landed that plane right there at Okinawa. Those guys are going to Manila to talk to the boss, MacArthur.
And these are the type of folks that you would transport, and so you were essentially part of.
The guys we carried all had suits on just like on the Missouri, had caps on and hats.
Right.
They really dressed nice.
Right. And these were the Japanese were very kind to you.
Oh,
after the
man,
war,
they would
right?
bow all the time. I got to say one more thing about when I was at San Antonio Airstrip. That's right above
In Luzon.
Luzon, right.
Right,
It's right above Subic Bay. Well, I went out there one morning, and I hadn't told this, I don't think.
Go ahead.
I don't even know if I've told this or not. Well, there's a bunch of guys under the plane. They sent me out to a guard duty. You know, once in a while we had to do guard duty on the plane. So I had my 45, went out there to get in the plane, listen to the radio and whatever. And all these guys, troops were on the plane, about 10 of them. I said, you gonna fly out tomorrow? I said, no, we're here to guard your plane. I said, well, all right. Well, they had hand grenades, rifles. So I pulled the stair down, and I got up there, and I said, y'all want some hot cocoa or hot coffee? Said, yes, sir. I said, all right. Now, this is illegal, what I did. This is supposed to be for emergencies. So I called two of them up here. I said, look at the back. There's some bee rations back here. Bring them up here, open them up. We're going to have bacon, beans, biscuits, chocolate bars. Man, I started up my little kitchen there, and I fed all these guys. And then just as soon as we got through eating, I said, y'all want to hear, they had the earphones all the way down in bucket seat. Y'all want to hear Tokyo Rose? Yeah. So I'd get them. Well, what about Hawaii? You want Hawaii? Yeah, I can get everybody. What about Frisco? Yeah, let's have Frisco and get the latest news. Go ahead.
Yeah. Want to take a look here when we get this. What is this that we're looking at? We can sort of go out on it a little bit, maybe. What is this that we're looking at right there? There we go. What is that?
What is that? We did. That's propaganda. We dropped B-29s, dropped those in Japan. That's propaganda. They showed all these islands. If you can see all the islands.
I'll hold it sideways. It's a clock, sideways clock, so you can see it all. There you go.
Well, that with a big hand, it's on Okinawa.
Right.
And it shows it's going to Japan, and they're next. All these other islands we knocked out, we captured.
And this is propaganda that y'all would drop from your airplane.
No, we didn't. No, B-29s.
B-29s would drop. Just to tell them,
you're next.
Give up, you're next.
You're next.
Is that right? Is that right? This is something that hangs on your back porch or near your back porch, and you're very proud of it. This is your shadow box that has your medals in it. If we can get a good shot at it, talk a little bit about what we're going to be looking at here. First off, here's a picture of the young Sergeant Al Hanson, and describe some of those medals for us.
Well, I have 4 battle stars there, and I'm not really proud of it, because these other guys, the Marines, Army, landed those places.
They did the work. Yeah.
They got battle stars, they got the Purple Heart, and a lot of them got the White Cross.
Right.
I don't think I was entitled to them, but
you got them and you're proud of them.
We just fly in and fly out. Sometimes we had to spend the night if it was a storm or something, but I didn't shoot it. I'm sure we were shot at, but ordinarily they didn't shoot at us because they would disclose their location, then a P-47 would blast them with napalm. Yeah, they wouldn't shoot at us.
But you put yourself in harm's way, and
Yes.
and you were always in danger, I guess, of losing your life, like one of the nearly 500,000 that lost their life in World War II, and you were decorated for that, and I think that's well deserved. But you think other people deserve it more.
Yeah, I do there. And what's funny, was flying from Nadzab to Hollandia. You pronounced it wrong the other night.
Okay.
And that's where MacArthur was. But we had to fly over the Stanley Mountains. And they told us, I said, look, if you crash, these people there, these natives there, have never seen people like us. There's headhunters there. Just head for the coast, and a submarine will pick you up. Now, wasn't that crazy?
Indeed. You were a former commander of the American Legion in Hearn,
Yes,
and
sir.
a former commander of the VFW right
Yes,
here
sir.
in Bryan. I know that that's something you're proud of, and your continued involvement with the VFW
Right.
here.
Thank you.
It's a great organization, isn't it?
Great.
Tell you what else a great organization is, your back porch. Doesn't that mean a lot to you? I mean, every morning, you and your friends, World War II buddies, you get together and you just talk. How did that develop?
Well, it's mostly about the war, about the VFW, girls.
Things that we can't
I
talk
left
about,
out
but
something.
things that we can, right?
If I got time to add this real
Sure.
quick.
Yeah.
We were flying from Okinawa. No, let's see where we were flying from. No, we was flying to the Philippines, to Okinawa. And to get off track,
Yeah.
we had to go in on a certain frequency. To go to that frequency, they had a submarine out there under the water with an antenna on. We'd fly to that. The pilot did all that. I had nothing to do with that.
Right.
The pilot would fly to that signal, and boy, we'd look for that, because you knew when you was right over, because that needle would turn like that.
Right.
We'd look around, and there'd be the submarine right there.
Oh my goodness.
Boy, thank
Al,
you.
we're out of time. It goes very quickly, but what a pleasure it has having my good friend on the show. Thank you, Al.
I
for
talk
your
too
service.
much. I
No,
talk
you don't.
too-
You talk just right. So now you've met one of my favorite veterans, Uncle Al Hanson. I wish you could all gather sometime on his back porch to hear the stories of the greatest generation. But there's just not enough room. I'll just keep bringing them here. We salute Sergeant Al Tex Hanson and all veterans for their service. And thanks to our underwriter, First National Bank. Please join us next time on Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbiville.